So I would like to introduce to you my friend, Charlotte Davis. She lives in Searcy. She lives in Arkansas. She works for the Searcy School District as a child nutritionist in charge of all of the nutrition for the whole school district, for all the children. She has done that as long as I've known her. More importantly, oops, I didn't get it out yet. Here it is. It's always on my bookshelf. More importantly, she is the author of our most awesome resource, My Place for Nutrition, which is our nutrition component for First Place for Health. And we'll talk more about that at the end. But right now, I just want to turn it over to Charlotte. She's going to tell you more about herself, but I just want you to know she's awesome. She's been with First Place for a long time. She's done it. She has walked this journey right along with us, and that's one of the best things about her. So Charlotte, take it away.
Hey, everybody. It has been so exciting to hear all the places that you're from. This is one of the coolest things about doing webinars, but I will just be totally honest with you. It kind of freaks me out a little bit to talk to a camera instead of to people. I told somebody today I think I would rather talk to 1,000 people in an audience sometimes than talk to a camera, because I just can't see everybody. And I love seeing people and seeing your faces and seeing how you respond. So I hope that you will enjoy this tonight. Helen has heard me do a similar presentation to this, and she was excited by that and wanted me to share this tonight. We're going to start out the night with talking about some history of fad diets, and then we'll talk about some that are going on now, and then we'll talk about some just good overall nutrition guidelines for you. But to get started off, I just want you to let you know a little bit about me, so you know I'm a person. If Helen will put up my first slide for me. Having a little bit of, oh, here we go. Okay, good deal. Okay, well, this first one, I just want y'all to, I want to introduce my family. On the left is my whole family. My husband, Tony, my daughter, Kayla, my son, Jake. They are 23 and 27, our kids are. And Tony and I have been married over 30 years. It'll be 33 years in May. And just some stuff, we love to travel together for fun. I'm so thankful that my grown children still like to go places with me. One of the things that especially me and my daughter love are going to Comic-Cons. We love superheroes, and you can see up there in the top picture my two kids with Tom Holland in between them. And if you're not a superhero fan, I will let you know that is the new Spider-Man. So they were so excited one time when we were going to visit my father-in-law in Houston that Comic-Con was going on, where he was there, and they were so thrilled to get to meet him. And then on the bottom, those of you who are more close to my age might recognize this guy, Lou Ferrigno. I used to love watching The Incredible Hulk with my family when I was a kid, and one of our favorite lines from that was, "You wouldn't like me when I'm angry." So anyway, we have a lot of fun doing that as just kind of entertainment for us. So go ahead, Helen. Okay, I promised you that we were going to talk about some fad diets in history. And I know in talking with people, I've been leading First Place groups since 1995. And I have heard of lots and lots of diets. And being a registered dietitian and teaching and counseling patients early in my career before I came into school nutrition, I've heard about so many. But I picked a few just to kind of go back and let you see that things tend to go around and come back around many times, at least the components of them. And some of these are kind of humorous, some of them are just kind of scary, but wanted to go over a few of those just to see where we've come from, and especially in the way of dieting. So in 1820, this is probably one of the first celebrity promoted diets. Lord Byron wanted everyone to follow the vinegar and water diet. And basically what this was every kind of plain starch you can imagine was all you could eat, like white bread, white potatoes, things like that. And then you doused it all with vinegar before you ate it. And then you could drink water or you could drink plain tea. And that was pretty much it for this. And he made that popular. So obviously, not very many food groups represented there. We'll talk more about that later. But 1863, moving on a little bit. This one's really interesting, Banting's low carbohydrate diet. This was actually, Dr. Banting, Frederick Banting, created this to help people who had insulin-dependent diabetes, because back then there was no insulin. They had type 1 diabetes, and there was really no way for them to metabolize carbohydrates. And so this was to help them manage their blood sugar a little bit better, so without it going skyrocketing. And it became so popular that dieting started to be called Banting after him. But he later on was responsible for the research for insulin's discovery, and even got a Nobel Prize for that. But he never meant for everybody to follow this. But that's what happened. So called Banting. Okay, in 1903, Fletcherizing. This one's interesting. This was done by Horace Fletcher. He was kind of a self-proclaimed nutritionist guy. And this was actually about saving money. People just didn't have a lot of money for food. And so he said if you chewed your food 32 times, that would decrease the amount of food that you ate. You would feel more full. And so that's really kind of an early behavior modification technique. But it wasn't so much about losing weight as it was about making yourself feel full and like I said, saving money. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And so that was called Fletcherizing, if you did that, if you chewed your food 32 times before you swallowed it. 1920, the cigarette diet. This was promoted by one of the big tobacco companies. On their ads, they would encourage women to reach for a cigarette instead of sweets. So I thought, okay, great. That's really, they would say that it's so much healthier than eating sweets. So you can do that, and it'll keep you from overeating. So we know definitely now that's not the case. 1930, Dr. Stoll's diet aid. This one is interesting to me because it was really kind of the first advent of the liquid protein diet. It was marketed to women in beauty parlors. And so a lot of women followed it because it was kind of a fad at the time, a craze. But they saw that it caused a lot of people to get sick because it just didn't provide enough nutrients. People were having nutrient deficiencies and just didn't have enough calories. In fact, it caused this type of diet to be kind of banned for a while because it was so unhealthy. It made so many people sick. So that moved away from that. In 1950, and some of you maybe heard about this even though you weren't around in 1950. I wasn't around then, but this one tends to come back around. It's called the grapefruit diet, and also known as the Hollywood diet. And this one was pretty much just a specific menu that you were given to follow, like for about a week. But every single time that you ate, you had to eat some form of grapefruit, either grapefruit to eat or grapefruit juice, along with the meal that you were eating. And the idea was that it burned fat. And as we know now, that is absolutely not the case. The reason that this diet worked was because it was really, really low calorie. You followed these specific menus and you ate this grapefruit, and everybody just thought it was the grapefruit, but it was really just eating less than 1,000 calories a day that was making them lose weight. Also coming around in 1950, which has made an appearance again, is the cabbage soup diet. And this one was started by a chain letter. And it had this recipe for this cabbage soup, and you could eat as much of it as you wanted, but it's all you could eat. And so you made this recipe and you just ate it. And in a week, you were supposed to have massive weight loss. And obviously people did, but it had so few calories that people lost not only, they didn't lose fat necessarily, they lost fluid, they lost muscle, but they did not necessarily lose fat. And as soon as they went off of it because they were bored, and it had side effects, which were not fun. You can ask their family members probably about that. So you would not want to follow that for very long. And then moving into 1970, the liquid protein diets came back around. And I actually do remember this. I was a small child and remember people going on liquid diets again at that point. And they were a little healthier than they were back in the 1930s, but they still didn't provide all the nutrients that were needed, and they had to have a warning on them if they provided less than 400 calories a day. The FDA required a warning. And so you can, if anything requires a warning, it's probably a sign that you probably shouldn't do it. Not a good thing. Okay, Helen. Okay, this one is so fun. I mean, crazy, but funny. 1976, the Sleeping Beauty diet. This one is where people took something to make them sleep, medication to make them sleep for several days so that they wouldn't eat. They were heavily sedated. And so they went to sleep, they didn't eat for several days, and the weight loss was minimal because as soon as the people woke up, guess what happened? They were ravenous and they ate everything in sight. And so it really did not do what they wanted it to do. 1986, and I remember this one very well because I was actually in college during that time, and I knew people that were doing it, and also my mother was doing it. And she called me, or actually I went home on the weekend, and she was saying, and this was before I even took a lot of my dietetic classes. I was just like in the beginning of school with my general education. So but she still thought I should know, about this. So she showed me this paper with this rotation diet on it. And what it was is you followed this specific set of menus for 3 weeks, and then you went off for a week. You had like a week of vacation, and that was the rotation. And then you followed it again for 3 weeks. This one was made popular by a group of grocery stores. It started out with a group of grocery stores in Nashville, Tennessee. And what's interesting about it was when I looked at the diet my mom was showing me, it had specific brands of several things on it, like certain brands of pineapple, certain brands of cottage cheese, certain brands of soup, and said you had to follow it exactly. So you can see who was benefiting from this would be the grocery stores. They made a killing off this. It was a really good thing for them. And people did lose weight, but again, it was because they were following a specific rigid set of menus that had a very low calorie count overall. So they were losing weight, but they weren't really learning how to eat correctly. So when they got off of it, guess what happened? They gained all the weight back and more. Okay, 1990, cabbage soup diet came back again. Some of y'all may remember it when it resurged then. I remember seeing things about that on my email, coming in about that. 1994, Dr. Atkins, high protein, low carb diet. This one, we still see evidence of this one. It still floats around. There are still products, Atkins, high protein, low carb snacks at the grocery store. This one was, it was done by a physician. He did not have training in high levels of training in nutrition. He just thought it was a good idea. And a lot of people jumped on it, and it did create weight loss. And we're going to talk more about why it created weight loss when we talk about the keto diet later, because it's very, very similar. So we'll get into more detail on that. But even back then in 1994, the Heart Association jumped on it and said, oh, this is not good. These people are getting too much saturated fat. This is not healthy. So a lot of people were kind of scared away from it even back then. 1995, Sugar Busters. This one was created by 3 physicians, and they basically said in their book that sugar was toxic, and you should not have sugar in any way, shape, or form. Even a lot of natural sugars from fruits and things like that. They even banned carrots, and there were a lot of fruits that were banned on this. So there were a lot of fruits and vegetables that were said to be, toxic. Don't ever eat this ever again. And that one was not popular. It stayed popular for a little bit, but people just got really burned out on leaving out so many things out of their diets and went back to their normal way of eating and gained all the weight back. In 2000, and this is kind of a thing we see more and more now, the raw foods diet. It's kind of like now what you might say, it can be like a vegan diet where everything is plant-based, but in this case, everything was supposed to be raw. You couldn't eat anything cooked at all. Everything had to be raw. Your grains had to be sprouted grains. no cooked foods. And if you had meat, it was supposed to be raw. And if you had dairy, it was supposed to be unpasteurized. So that made all the people in the health department world very upset with this one because people could get sick. So that one didn't stay around too long in that form. In 2006, there was something called the maple syrup diet. Some of you may remember that. This was promoted by a lot of celebrities, and it was basically like a 10-day liquid fast. And it had very low calories, again, caused really fast weight loss, but you lost muscle and bone and fat, and this is not something you could stay with, so you went off and usually gained the weight right back again. 2010 came the baby food diet. I remember this one. I had people ask me about it. You were supposed to eat 14 jars of baby food in a day, any kind you wanted, 14 jars of baby food, and you could have an adult dinner if you wanted to, but it was restricted what you could have on that. And obviously, baby food is not going to have the nutrition that adults need and in the quantities that they need it. So you were not getting your nutrition needs met. And obviously, this is not something that we want to eat while we still have teeth all the time. I may have to do that someday down the road, but I don't want to do that now. So anyway, that was one of the things that I thought was pretty entertaining. So why do you think all these things? Helen, do you have a question, or do you want to do now, or you want to hold off? Hold off? Okay, so what makes all these things what draws us to this stuff? Probably our just desperation, right? We get desperate, we want to lose weight, we want to see it come off fast. Somebody says something works, and so we do it. And and there's a lot of focus on weight in our society and appearance, and we want to do things quickly to make us look better faster, so that we'll feel better about ourselves. We don't always think about our health. We just jump onto it. But so many times these things are about benefiting someone else and not you. And you need to always consider that these diets usually a lot of times will have someone who's benefiting from putting this out there. But the bottom line is simple. If a diet or a product sounds too good to be true, guess what? It probably is. There's something about it that is just not quite right.
We just thought we would have a little fun. This is for fun, so don't anybody get offended. We're launching a poll. As it shows, the winning is 4-8. So, and then it looks like Too Many to Count actually comes in second, and then the tied is 0-3 and 9-14. So we just thought it would be fun. There's a lot of results. I wanted to say I did buy baby food recently, but I know some of you guys know I live in Hawaii, and I had a recipe for sugar-free applesauce. And there's limited stuff sometimes in my grocery stores, and there was no sugar-free applesauce on the shelf that I could buy. And it hit me, wait a minute, I bet you there's no sugar in baby's applesauce. So sure enough, I went and bought some baby applesauce, because I figured, all right, applesauce. But it was weird. So I just wanted to be honest and say, I do have some baby food in my pantry, but it was because I wanted some sugar-free applesauce for some muffins I was making. So, all right, take it away, Charlotte.
Okay. Well, that's perfectly fine, Helen. I mean, I had a recipe one time that called for baby food prunes. And it was like a dessert bar or something where it helped make you could lower the fat if you used that in there. And hey, it had a lot of nutrition and no sugar added. So so it's just a matter of that wasn't the only thing you were eating all day long, though, was baby food. So that's a little bit different. Okay, well, we're going to talk about 5 things now to look at when you're considering any type of eating plan, or if you know that you're following First Place for Health and other people ask you, about a diet and what do you think about this? These are some things that you can bring up and explain, have you looked at this? Have you looked at that? And because some people just absolutely don't think about it. They're just wanting results and they don't have any good information or they've never been taught. And so, this will help you help them, even if you already know these things. So, first of all, you don't want to eat something have a diet or diet. The first dieting danger is exclusion of food groups. And so any diet that leaves out whole food groups, such as, all grains are excluded, all fruits are excluded, all that sort of thing, anything like that, you want to be wary of that. Just because there are so many chances of losing nutrients that way. And even if they say, oh, you can take a supplement, which so many times that'll be what they'll say, oh, take a vitamin mineral supplement, this and that. With that, you will not be able to absorb the nutrients in the vitamin mineral supplement like you would if it was from the food to start with. So just kind of think about that. If it excludes a whole food group or even a whole, what we call a macronutrient, like if it excludes all fat or excludes all carbohydrates, anytime you exclude all of anything, you're running a risk of losing some specific nutrients in your eating every day. Next is elimination of the need for exercise. Anytime you're told, oh, it's not necessary to exercise, to be healthy or to have long-term weight loss maintenance, they're just not being truthful with you, because every bit of research that talks about long-term weight loss and maintenance includes exercise as one of the primary components. What you eat and how much activity you have are two sides of the same coin. It is, you can't separate it. And just find something that you like to do. In first place, My Place for Fitness book is awesome for giving you ideas. And I have people in my class that are always coming up with things. They're going to dance classes and water aerobics and all kinds of things, because, everybody can't do the same things because of joint issues or other things that are in their lives, but there's usually something you can do. And so some kind of exercise, okay? The next dieting danger is, and this is just an ad I pulled off of the internet. I don't have any vendetta against this particular one, but extreme results are promised. And by extreme, I mean, large amounts of weight in 1 week or 2 weeks. That sort of thing. Most of the time, if you lose more than 2 to 3 pounds a week, you're basically just losing water and muscle. You're not losing the fat that you really want to lose. And so any extreme results that sound too good to be true, again, that's usually too good to be true. Okay, the next one. Anytime that expensive supplements are required, that's a dieting danger. And remember what I said earlier about there's somebody's getting the advantage when something like this happens. At the very bottom of the small print, it tells you that you have to buy $200 or $300 or $400 worth of supplements. And I'm not making these numbers up. I've had people tell me this for specific programs. They'll give you a menu to follow, and then they'll say, and you need to take these specific things every day, and so someone is making money off of that. And our food does provide what we need. If we eat correctly, we can get the vitamins and minerals that we need, unless, and I will always say this, if your physician says you have a specific need for a specific nutrient and has prescribed that for you. For instance, if you are taking calcium because of bone density issues, you're taking extra calcium, or you're taking extra vitamin D for a deficiency because you have been you aren't able to be outside a lot, or you just have developed a deficiency in that area. If your physician prescribes a supplement for you, that's one thing. But when you just go on a diet that requires a whole bunch of expensive supplements because they say you need that to lose weight, please, just question that and ask your doctor. The next one, and this one is what we saw in so many of those bad diet history things we talked about: excessive repetition or rigid menus. And the excessive repetition or rigid menus, there's two main problems with that. First of all, the repetition means you're eating the same things all the time, and so you're not getting a wide variety. So you could be missing out on specific nutrients. And on the rigid, like only this type or only this brand or only this, those are, and it also makes you sometimes spend more money, but it can also cause boredom. And when you get bored with the same things over and over, guess what happens? You go, quote, off the diet, and you go back to your regular way or old way of eating because you're so tired of all the repetition. And so boredom is probably one of the main reasons that people go off of these types of things. Okay.
Charlotte, we have a question. One of the question is, how do you feel about intermittent fasting and Whole30 is one of the questions. I didn't know if this was a good time to talk about that or not.
I can talk a little bit about that. The intermittent fasting, I've been keeping up with the research on that, and I've seen some pros and cons to that. And for those of you who may not know what that is, intermittent fasting can be like skipping meals or eating really low one day and then going up the next day, where you're not just consistently fasting, but where you're skipping certain meals or certain days. There has been some research that's shown with some people it can be effective, but in the course of a week, it's still not recommended, even by the experts that have been doing these studies, that you go below a certain average number of calories per day. So like, for instance, if in first place, for instance, the lowest level we have is 1,300 to 1,400 calories a day. And so the intermittent fasting people that have had good luck with this, with people staying properly nourished and all of that, is when over the course of a week, they still get that average every day. And some people, it does seem to help their metabolism to move their food around like that. But there's really not a lot of big studies yet about it. I mean, it's interesting. I'm trying to keep up with it because it is very interesting, because some people's bodies apparently, treat that differently. So it's going to be interesting to see in the next few years what they find out about that. But a bottom line is, it's not harmful if you can still average that, you get the right amount of nutrients and calories over the course of the week. And sometimes for some people can benefit them as far as they'll have maybe a little bit quicker weight loss, but you don't want to lose out on nutrients. I hope that makes sense. And then the Whole30, I'm not real sure everything about it. I've known some people on it. And from what I understand, it just is all natural and there's no processed foods, which is always good, that part of it. There's lots of fruits and vegetables in there. If I'm recalling correctly, though, it seems to be like it's pretty low carbohydrate. So you may be getting into some of the same situations as like with ketone. But I'll study up on that, and maybe the next time I'll have a better answer for you. I can email you if you want to email me. My email is at the top of the handout or the listening guide. I think if I didn't take it off, it's on there. And if you want to shoot me an email, and I'll do a little bit more research on that. But the good things about Whole30, I do know, is that you are limiting added sugars, and you're eating more fruits and vegetables and lean proteins and olive oil and guacamole. I know a lot of it's avocado. I know one lady in my office is always fixing things with avocado. And so I don't have anything to bash it right now as far as that goes, but I don't know all the risk involved with it.
We have one other question that is about diets, and it was earlier when you were going through the diet list. Is the 1863 diet the same or similar to today's low carb diet?
The 1863,
which was
no,
go ahead.
It's similar, but there's just so many things now that are available for people that weren't available back then for them to use. So nutrition wise, I think it was worse back then because there were no supplements and there were no, it was just really a difficult thing to follow even at that time. And now it just, the way it works is basically the same. Yes. And they're both dangerous, but it was a lot harder. And I think they were probably even more malnourished trying to do it back then than they are now.
Great. And then just several people are like, where's the listening down? So in the email that you got saying, reminding you about the meeting, there was a little link in here that you could have gone to print off, but don't worry about that, everybody.
Yeah, you can come back to it.
Yeah. And this is being recorded, and we'll send you a link tomorrow in the email that will have a link so you can watch it. And all of you guys that already subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll get it right away, because most of us that subscribe to our YouTube channel, that's where we'll post it. Sometime tomorrow it'll get posted. So don't worry if you don't have the listening guide. It's not gonna make any difference. And if you're watching this on YouTube now, the listening guide will be in the little memo line under, in the comments underneath. All right, we're gonna go. I'm gonna let you go forward. We have some more questions, but we'll go ahead and go forward. Go ahead, Charlotte.
Okay. All right. Well, those are great questions, and I wanted to mention also that, just to sum this up about these 5 dieting dangers, if the way that you are choosing to eat when you are, quote, dieting, unquote, is not some way that you can eat for the rest of your life, then it's probably not for you, because you're not going to be able to sustain it. And then you want something that you can sustain. And that's why I've been living and doing First Place since 1995, because you can work with it. And anyone who has any, and we'll talk about that personalization a little bit later, so we'll get into that. The next slide is just basically just says research, and that's to remind me to talk to you about that. Remember to read the fine print on any diet article that you read, or any diet that you look at. If it says studies show, this is how a lot of articles start. Studies show. So get to the bottom, read where it's coming from, and make sure that it's been done with a significant number of people. Look for how long that it's been, how long the study covered. Look for what type of people and what type of health problem, what age they were, because it may not apply to you, and it also may be so small that it doesn't really apply to anybody. If I read one time that literally said it followed 10 people in their 20s for 2 weeks, and they were basing these results on 10 people who were in their 20s for 2 weeks. I mean, that's not me, and that's not a lot of people who are trying to find a good way to eat. So look at the small print, and then always check it out. You want to find something that's been done, with more than 100 people, preferably thousands, of people, and maintained, the study been at least 6 or 8 weeks, or, something like that. And then been done by somebody reputable. Sometimes studies that are funded by a certain company, like, for instance, I read studies that have been done, like, for, say, the American Egg Board, but that the American Egg Board is going to want these studies to promote egg consumption, so they're not going to release something that's not going to do that. So you want to make sure they have another party that's reviewing their research, things like that. You want to make sure if it's done by a certain group of people, the potato farmers, for instance, that's another group that does studies quite often. You want to make sure that their research is being reviewed and it's been done with a lot of people for over a decent period of time. Okay, well, let's talk about one that seems to be all the rage right now, right? The keto diet. And keto it's short for ketogenic. And so let's talk about, is it really the miracle diet that everybody is talking about that it is? It's everywhere. I get ads for it on my Facebook page all the time, or on my feed all the time. Recipes all the time. Is everything bad about the keto diet? No, it's not everything bad. Let's talk about it. It's a high fat, high protein, low carb eating pattern, very similar to the Dr. Atkins one in that happened back in the 80s or 90s. So it differs from general eating recommendations in that it does have more fat and more protein and less carbohydrate than what the major health organizations recommend for health. Many nutrient-rich foods are carbohydrates, like all the whole grains, the things like oats and whole wheat and quinoa, all those kind of things. I mean, they're very healthy grains, and those are left out on many times. On a keto diet, if you're following it strictly, you are told to keep your total carbohydrates down to 50 grams a day. And just to put that in perspective, if you ate an apple it has about, a small apple has about 15 grams in it. One slice of bread has about 15 grams. And a glass of milk, cup of milk has about 12. You know, so you would be almost at your maximum with those three things in a really true keto diet for the day. Everything else that you would eat would not be able to have carbohydrate in it. You know, so you would be getting the vast majority of your calories from protein and fat. And what this does is that it, when you restrict carbohydrates, which is your body's primary source of fuel, your brain's primary source of fuel, because we need glucose. That's what carbohydrates break down to pretty easily, to glucose, and it's your body's primary fuel. And so when that is removed or restricted to that degree, your body starts breaking down your fat. And since you are eating protein on this diet, it does go first to the fat. And then the protein is kind of spared to a certain degree. Not totally. You can lose your muscles on this too if you do not exercise. So what happens is your body takes that fat and breaks it down into something called ketones. So that's what ketogenic means, making ketones. And these are little compounds that your body can use for fuel when you don't have the easy access to the carbohydrates. So your body starts breaking your body down. And yay, we love to lose fat, right? But there are side effects to this. Because you are breaking down these ketones for fuel, there are more compounds that aren't normally going through your system that are there. So your kidneys are having to filter out a lot more toxins and things like that from the breakdown of these ketones. So it can be really difficult on, or hard on, some of your organs if you do it for very long. It is a way to break down fat, but it is not without consequences to the rest of your body. Is it safe? Okay, let's talk about that. This eating pattern is not recommended at all for some groups of people. And I'm going to make sure, I'm going to read these to make sure that I don't leave one of these out. Individuals with pancreatic disease, liver conditions, thyroid problems, eating disorders or history of eating disorders, gallbladder disease, or those who have had their gallbladder removed. And besides that, there are some short-term and long-term effects for the rest of us who don't have those types of things. The short-term effects are flu-like symptoms. In fact, you might even have heard it called the keto flu. And that includes upset stomach, headache, fatigue, dizzy spells, and difficulty sleeping. A lot of times people have constipation on this because they don't get any whole grains and they get limited fruits and vegetables because of the carbohydrate restrictions. And so they end up being constipated, and then their doctor has to provide a fiber supplement. So if anyone's following this and they're wanting to stay on it for very long, they're more than likely going to need a fiber supplement just to help their digestive system to work properly. The long-term risks are just like some of the other diets we talked about earlier, leaving out that many types of foods, those whole grains, those fruits and vegetables that have the carbohydrates. You're going to get some, more than likely, some mineral and vitamin deficiencies. And also there's the chance of kidney stones, liver disease, and that sort of thing. So it does have some definite side effects down the road. There is some current research about it where they're looking at it helping with diabetics, with managing blood sugar, but they're also saying that not for long term. You know, it might just be a short term thing that they would do this to get kind of in line, and then they would need to go back because it's not going to be healthy for them in the long term. And the high fat nature of this is really controversial because of the saturated fats, so much like bacon and meat fat and other saturated fats that science has shown in large numbers of studies that type of fat can cause your cholesterol to go up and cause blocking in your arteries. So really not my favorite diet. I think that it scares me that it's as popular that it is. But I think that more studies will be done because it is so popular, and I'm anxious to see that. But the jury is still pretty much out as far as for long term. On short term, there are some studies that show, yes, if you follow this for a couple of months, you're probably not going to hurt anything, or even up to 6 months, as long as you're medically supervised. But after that, there is just nothing out there that says it's a good thing to do. So I would not recommend that. The only people that this has shown to be really good for, the studies that have been there, and it's actually been used for people with epilepsy for 100 years. This is like one of the few ways to manage epilepsy, especially in the absence of medications that some people may not be able to take. So that's the only thing that I could read up on that where it was said this is what they should follow if they're having trouble with not being able to take medications for epilepsy. And the jury's still out on the weight loss and the diabetes thing for anything past 6 months, especially. But a lot of doctors will just say do it for just a few weeks and then go off of it because it's just not healthy. And I don't know about you, but I really would not like to follow something that has a warning label attached to it. So anyway, that's what I can share about the keto diet. Okay, the next one that pops up a lot that I get some questions about, especially in the fitness world for some reason, this one tends to be popular. It's called the PALEO diet, and it's short for Paleolithic, and that's like a caveman or a Stone Age type diet. And it centers around the idea that if we ate like our ancestors did 10,000 years ago, we'll be healthier, we'll lose weight, and we'll curb disease. And so the only things that are allowed on this diet are things that can be hunted, fished, or gathered. So things like meat, fish, shellfish, poultry, eggs, vegetables, roots, fruits, and berries. Basically no grains, no dairy, no dry beans, no sugar or salt. And so some of those things, obviously that's good. The less sugar and salt that we add to things, the better off we are. But with leaving out grains and dairy, once again, you might be getting into some of the nutrient deficiencies that we talked about earlier. The bottom line is it's probably hard to sustain it because you are eliminating entire food groups and types of foods. And it can also result in disordered eating. Some of the studies done with this show that it kind of results in that for people, that if they don't have an eating disorder when they start it, they sort of tend to move in that direction with this. And we also live in a society where we can't really eat exactly like our ancestors ate because there's not wild game readily available in a lot of places. And the meat we do consume has been domesticated and is produced on a large scale a lot of times. And so it's really hard to actually eat that way. And again, it's hard to sustain over any period of time because there's going to be things like celebrations where food's involved where you're going to want to eat things, that are not allowed on this diet. So again, not sustainable. Okay, another one that I want to talk about that's kind of popular now, and I'm really excited about this one, to be honest, or about this set of studies that are being done, and it's the anti-inflammatory diet. And those of you who already have the My Place for Nutrition book, you probably know that there is a wellness worksheet in there that is about superfoods, and that was one of my favorite ones to write and to research for you guys to put in there. But it goes into some of the new emerging research about anti-inflammatory eating, okay? And it's not necessarily a specific diet. It's really just eating healthy, and it's including the things that we're already telling you to do in First Place for Health, but it's just cool to me, the research that's coming along to help us to know that it's even better than what we had anticipated. But so what is inflammation? It is a sign that the immune system is fighting infection. And the infection can come from germs, wounds, allergens, toxins, or it can come from other causes. And we typically think of inflammation as redness and swelling and pain, but sometimes it's in our body where we can't see it. Like in our lungs, we might get bronchitis. And we can't see that on the outside, but our lungs can be inflamed on the inside and cause us to have pain, difficulty breathing, and those sorts of things. There's some new research that's coming out that's saying that even having a large amount of fat tissue in our bodies might be causing us to be in a state of like chronic inflammation, and that you want to make sure that you decrease the amount of inflammation in your body so that you are a healthier person, because long-term inflammation can damage your body's DNA, which increases your risk for cancer especially. So we want to make sure that we keep that inflammation down as much as possible. Like I said, it might not be even something we can see, and that's what's so exciting about learning about this, is that studies are showing that eating really healthy foods can help decrease this chronic inflammation. What we do know is appears that eating a variety of nutritious foods may help reduce inflammation, and what we eat may help prevent and keep chronic inflammation in check. A healthy eating plan provides nutrients that help keep your immune system working well. One of the main things that's the focus of this study are fruits and vegetables, because they contain chemicals called phytochemicals. They're little tiny. There's thousands of them in fruits and vegetables. A lot of them haven't even been discovered yet. And I know that God knows what those are, and He put them there for a reason. But those fruits and vegetables contain all these things in their skin, in the pigments, in the fibers, throughout those fruits and vegetables that apparently are associated with cancer-fighting properties and anti-inflammatory properties. So it's associated with lower inflammation in our bodies when we eat those things. So for now, the best advice is to adopt a healthy eating style overall, which is first place for health for sure, as we've been discussing, and just incorporate plenty of fruits and vegetables and focus on some of those superfoods that we talked about in my place for nutrition. All fruits and vegetables are superfoods, but there's some of them there's even more good research about, and those are noted in that. And so just check that out if you haven't looked at that wellness worksheet yet. Okay, and then every year, and some of you may even see this, you may even get U.S. News and World Report or go online and look at this every year. They have, for several years now, they have done a diet rankings thing. And just last month, this is hot off the press for 2020, I wanted to put in here what the top 3 diets were as far as health was concerned. And these 3 were the best in these 3 areas. Best diets overall, best diets for healthy eating, and best diabetes diets. So these 3. The Mediterranean diet, and most of these, I will have to say, they're not, quote, a diet, they're a way of eating, okay? So the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, and the flexitarian diet. Just to give you a little bit of information on how they came up with these rankings, that there's several health experts, physicians, dietitians, lots and lots of experts go through all of these and rank them. And in doing the rankings, they have a 1 to 5 rating, with 5 being extremely effective and 1 being ineffective for 6 categories. They look at short-term weight loss, long-term weight loss, diabetes health, heart health, the ease of complying with the diet, and the nutritional completeness of the diet. And so these all got like 5s, basically, on all of those things. And just so that you know, you can eat the First Place for Health food plan and follow every one of these, because the First Place for Health food plan is so easy to work with and flexible. For instance, the Mediterranean diet, the main components of the Mediterranean diet are lots of fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, especially fish, and salmon being at the top. Then the primary oil or the primary fat that's used is olive oil. There is dairy in it, but it's low-fat dairy. There's not a lot of high-fat dairy in it. It's, just moderate amounts of dairy, which is what our plan has. And so you could go through and pick the superfoods basically in every group in the First Place for Health food plan and be following the Mediterranean diet, because that's what's in it. We made sure that when we did the food groups that we listed those foods at the top. The DASH diet, the dietary approach to stop hypertension, is pretty much like the Mediterranean diet. It does it's not as fish-centered as the Mediterranean diet is. It does allow some beef and lean pork, those sorts of things. But also avoiding sodium is a big part of this diet, really watching the amount of sodium. So there's no cured meats, there's no smoked things, that could increase the sodium. So that those types of things would be limited in this, because it does help with people who are salt sensitive, who have high blood pressure. So that's one of the things that's included in that. Flexitarian is, and this is kind of a new term, it's been around for 2 or 3 years now, but it's a vegetarian diet with a little bit of meat as a protein thrown in. It's like you eat mostly vegetarian with things like beans and cheese and things like that as your protein, but then you add in some chicken every once in a while, or you add in some fish every once in a while. You just don't, every day is not completely vegetarian. It might be that you have meat once a day or twice a week or something like that. And the First Place for Health food plan does have all the non-meat sources of protein listed, and many of them are listed as superfoods in the food groups as well. Okay, Helen? Oh, there was one more thing I wanted to mention, and it's not on that slide, so you don't have to go back, but they do some things about like the best commercial diet on the U.S. Foods and World Report. And interesting, I just wanted to share the best commercial diet was listed was Weight Watchers. So if somebody just has to follow a commercial plan, then Weight Watchers was up there because it did help with weight management and teaching, nutrition. It did provide education, that sort of thing. The keto was in the 3rd place for the fast weight loss, but it was only it was number 31 for heart health and number 34 in overall. So they were there. The paleo didn't show up anywhere in the rankings. It was not good at all. Okay, the dietary guidelines for Americans is our next thing. And this is I just wanted to throw this in here because this is what the First Place for Health food plan is based on. These are revised every 5 years. And so there'll be a new set coming out soon. And this is just what they are for now. And I don't expect them to change very much. They haven't changed very much over the last few years. They get a little bit more specific sometimes if you read details about them. But following a healthy eating pattern across the lifespan, focused on variety, which we talked a lot about tonight, nutrient density, in other words, more bang for your buck, try to get the most nutritious things in every food group, and amounts. And I think they stress amount a lot because as Americans, we really have a lot of portion distortion. We were just talking about this yesterday. I was eating with, my brother had come in from Texas and we were eating lunch, and we were talking about how large the portions were. He said, I always take half of it home because it's so much. And I said, I know, we do too, because it's just not a normal portion. And then we got to talking about things about what the portion was when we were growing up and what it is now. And like, for instance, I remember as a child, when we got ice cream at home, we got a scoop of ice cream in a little bitty cup. And it was like a half a cup. Well, that was normal to us. And my brother said when he went to visit his in-laws' house the first time, they gave him like a cereal bowl full of ice cream. And he just thought that was just so crazy because we had always just had a little tiny bit. But that just shows you that over time and in your environment, your family, what they do can affect the amount that you eat.
Charlotte, we're running low on time, and so I was going to bring up my favorite slide on here that I hope you'll still cover, and it's the
sure.
The personalized and sustainable. So here you go.
Okay.
Can you?
Oh yes. Okay. Yeah, and the other slides that you missed, they're just mainly the First Place food plan, little charts from that. So if you've got My Place for Nutrition, you have those. This one I love because First Place is the thing that's the best about it. It is personalized and it is sustainable over time. If you're lactose intolerant, for instance, you can use the non-dairy sources in the dairy group to get your that group. If you are following a gluten-free plan because you have your doctor has recommended that because of some digestive issues that you've been having, or I have a lady in my group that is doing an elimination diet right now for allergies. So she's limited on what food she can have from each food group. She can still have every food group in first place, so she's picking the things that the doctor has told her she can have. And so that's personalized for her right now. And it's so important that we do make our eating plan personalized so that we can follow it for a lifetime. If you live in certain parts of the United States, for instance, you like some foods maybe in the Northeast that in the South aren't that popular, or that in the West aren't that popular. I know in my classes, I'm having people all the time asking me how to count cornbread and how to count, and that's maybe not a thing where you live. But we talk, oh, yeah, that's a grain and it probably has added fat. So you're going to probably weigh it and count however many ounces of grain it is and how many teaspoons of oil are in that. So you can make it personalized for your likes, your dislikes. But I do want to make sure that everyone knows they need to branch out a little bit and try some new things sometimes. And that's one of the reasons that we put all those foods in all the food group listings in My Place for Nutrition, so that you could get some ideas for new things and make it more sustainable for you. Also, it can be personalized for things like diabetes. If your doctor has given you a certain level of carbohydrates to eat, then you can still do it with First Place for Health. You just spread it out throughout the day.
Thanks, Charlotte. I do see we have one question about how do you calculate protein to have based on a person's weight. And so I wasn't sure, I just wanted to recommend to all of you, if you're new to First Place for Health, that's what we're all about. It's a Christian weight loss program. And Charlotte's book, My Place for Nutrition, we have a whole thing on based on your age, your gender, how to pick the calorie range for you. And then our food plan is based on a calorie range. So the amount of protein that you would have is really based on what calorie range you are, because if you're in the 1800 calorie range, you're going to have this much protein and stuff. So I just wanted to say, really refer to your My Place for Nutrition book. That's going to be the one that's going to help you figure out how much protein you have. And we've had, I think keto, I'll just say keto feels like everybody's focused on protein all of a sudden. And so I'm just going to ask one more question that I heard you answer at Summit is, are we getting enough protein? A lot of people feel like we don't have enough protein in our diet. And I know you answered that. So I'm going to ask that because I know it's one I get asked a lot.
Yes, I get asked that a lot too. And yes, if you follow the First Place for Health food plan and you actually eat the number of ounces of cooked protein, ready to eat protein that it tells you, then you will be getting enough protein. Research has shown that we get plenty. In America, we get way more than what a lot of other countries do. And something you may not think about, though, is there's protein in every food group to some degree, except for fat, okay, and fruit. They don't have protein. But grains have some protein, and also the dairy group has protein. So if you're not getting all your dairy or you're not getting your grains, then you probably aren't getting all the protein that you need, because you need to get it from all those different places and not just from the meat group. That seems to be, the focus in keto is all that meat and all that protein. And we do not need that much to do well with our health. I know in Asia, protein's basically a condiment over there. I mean, they eat lots of vegetables and brown rice and things like that, and small amounts of meat, so, and they have one of the lowest incidences of heart disease in the world, so we're not hurting anything by cutting it down that low. It just seems low compared to what you might be accustomed to, but that doesn't mean that's what we need.
Amen. Well, y'all, I do want to just say one more time, talk about our book, talk about First Place for Health. If you're new to First Place, we welcome you. I know we saw a few people said this is their first webinar they've attended. Some people, I know we have a lot of brand new people in our virtual groups right now, and we have lots of groups starting all over the country. So if this is the first time you're here at First Place, welcome. We are glad you're here and thrilled for you to be here, and praying for all of you to have success on your journey. I was reminded today by a friend who became a First Place for Health member 4 years ago, and she was saying how different her life is, how she was alone before, and now she's just got this whole family of people, community. So we're just glad you're here. I'll remind all of you that you'll get an email with a link to this webinar. And tomorrow, for those of you guys that are watching live, thank you so much for your questions. And you can always go to look for First Place for Health on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we're always posting information about First Place on our website. And if you haven't become a level 1 member, it's free. You get our monthly email, and Charlotte writes a lot of stuff for us. You can just keep in touch with all the things going on. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Charlotte. We just love having you. And have a blessed evening, everyone. Have a great day.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good day to the person from Australia who's joining us. Blessings, everybody. Bye-bye.